Hello, I'm Casey Aiken, and this is 21 This Week. Coming up next, why are Democrats donating to the Hogan campaign? Candidates for county executive take their case to the voters. Is David Trone cancer-free, and does it matter on his campaign? And what are we to make of the Senate hearings involving Brett Kavanaugh and Christine Blasey Ford? Our panel of insiders will give you the story behind the story. We're joined by the Dean of Democratic Punditry, Sam Statland, Secretary of the Maryland Republican Central Committee, Mark Uncapher, and Transportation and Railway Consultant, Phil Bell. Stay tuned for these stories and more on the next 21 This Week. Since Labor Day, the three candidates for Montgomery County Executive, Democrat Mark Elrich, Republican Robin Ficker, and Independent candidate Nancy Florine, have engaged in a series of public forums to present themselves to the voters. Mr. Ficker stresses his accomplishment in passing ballot initiatives which he claims have saved the county millions of dollars, and the passage of the recent term limit initiative. Mrs. Florine declares that she is an advocate for the business community, and Mark Elrich, he'd choose any category, underscores his experience, and said his greatest concerns were representing the people of Montgomery County. Sam, what makes this race so different than in past years?
Well, the obvious elephant, in the closet, so to speak, is Nancy Florine, who is a Democrat switching and becoming an independent and seeking to try to win this office, which I think is absolutely atrocious. She didn't want to run in the Democratic primary because she knew she couldn't beat Mark in the primary. After the primary, which Mark won by a very small majority, thanks to his deep-root support within the county, the business community approached Nancy and talked her into switching parties, put a lot of money into her campaign, and are continuing to do so to outlast, to try to fight back with Mark. And I think she really is discounting any chance at all that she has with Robin Ficker by claiming that she's not going to affect the vote, not split the vote at all, which I think is a mistake. So I think she's really...
See, Mark Elrich only got 21% of the Democratic vote in the primary. They were begging for another candidate to run against him. He wasn't the universal choice. So why is she a turncoat for coming out and making that statement?
Because all of her accomplishments, everything that entitled her to be in position to run in this race, she accomplished by being a Democrat. And any loyal Democrat, a Democrat who supports the values of the Democratic Party, are just not going to vote for her in this primary. And for that reason, I think she is a turncoat, and I think she's just succumbing to the lure of money, big money, that she hopes will...
You make this sound like West Side Story. When you're a jet all the way to your last day.
Damn right, I'm a Democrat.
Oh my God. Mark, I want to go to you. Listen, this is a very special election because with three candidates running, we have the opportunity to see some real upsets. I mean, you're going to see part of the Democratic vote going with Florine. And what are you going to see coming from Robin Ficker? He's very popular up county.
He is very popular up county, and the choice that's presented is between two status quo Democrats. One is a NIMBY Democrat, and the other is a more pro-developer Democrat. But if you're not satisfied with the way the schools are going, if you're not satisfied with the spending, if you're not satisfied, most importantly, with transportation, Robin Ficker is going to be your choice.
So those people that are supporting Nancy Florine are Democrats who are not very progressive at all. And Mark's history is he is a person of the people. He does things for the best for the citizens of this county, and he always has, which is why I support him. And I don't think that Nancy can go on that track record at all. Furthermore...
Sam, I have a question for you. Were the progressive Democrats the one who voted for term limits? The Democrat Party isn't the only party and doesn't represent all of the people of Montgomery County.
Listen.
There's a lot of people in this county that are fed up with business as usual in this county, and Mark Elrich is business as usual.
Well, you just
They're
said
tired
it,
of them.
Casey. It's business as usual.
No,
and
it's-
Mark wants to get away from that business as
Well,
usual concept.
here's the problem. Under Mark Elridge, the trend will continue where Montgomery County has fewer businesses and is a bedroom community for jobs that are in Virginia. And that's something we don't want for lots of reasons.
Listen, Mark Elrich has said repeatedly that he's tired of being labeled that way. And he's going out of his way, especially recently, with the forum for the business community, which I think he did better than any of the other two candidates that were there. And he is supporting growth in small business, and he means it from his heart.
We need
But
growth in
honestly,
big business as well, Sam.
Right.
Phil, wrap this up for us.
It's really been the same thing with whether it's Mark or Nancy, because as a whole, they've been there for a long time. They've taken the county in a very progressive way. That's more like a choice between progressive heavy and progressive slightly less heavy. And that's why I think Robin Ficker is not only such a good option, but also why the term limits was created in the first place. Because the majority of Montgomery County said we don't want to keep going this way.
All right, well, I want to tell the voters that if they want to see the candidates for themselves and have that opportunity, they can tune in right to this channel, Channel 21, Montgomery Community Television, for a candidate forum on Monday evening between 7 and 8. This is a great opportunity. Kojo Nanbi and Tom Sherwood are the two hosts, and they're going to do a great job interviewing these three candidates, and you can decide for yourself which one you want to support in the upcoming election. Again, Monday, October 1st, between 7 o'clock, right here on MCM 21. Now let's go talk about the governor's race. Now, the governor's race is quite an unusual thing this year because we have Democrats giving money to the Republican candidate, Larry Hogan. So, Sam, what are we to make of this? Are we to say this race is all but over?
600,000 out of 8 million is a drop in the bucket. And during most contests, you will see people contribute to both parties by hedging their bet. And the amount of money that's been contributed is nothing, much less the vote count of those that contributed is absolutely minuscule. I don't think you're seeing any kind of a big turnover for the governor. Now, after saying that, I will tell you, what I like about the governor personally is that he keeps his promises. That's what I like about Mark Elrich. He keeps his promises.
All right. So, Phil, I mean, maybe it's a little too soon to say, but there's only 6 weeks left in the election cycle, and there's about a 21-point difference between the governor and Mr. Jealous. Is it time for the fat lady to start warming up her pipes and getting ready to sing?
Well, I've worked on campaigns, so it's never time for the fat lady to start singing. If you're on a campaign, you keep going full throttle all the way. What is noteworthy, though, I got to disagree with you, Sam. 600,000 out of 8 million is not a drop in the bucket. Any campaign will tell you $600,000 is pretty substantial, and that does represent a recognition that the way things had been going in Maryland, the Martin O'Malley, that era, the fact that in some places it's 4-1, Democrat to Republican, that shows that this is actually becoming a two-party state. That's noteworthy. It also, though, and I hate to say this, it's also a little bit of a recognition that Governor Hogan has been willing to do some things like banning fracking and otherwise that don't exactly comport with what perhaps the GOP should be doing, aren't the right thing, and they're trying to set the table for maybe more of that in a second term.
The best thing about this race going on between Jealous and the governor is that it's going to draw out more Democrats, which is going to favor Mark in the Montgomery County, and which is why he's going to win.
You know, I got a prediction for you, my friend. Turnout in this election is going to be dismal. It is going to be awful. It'll be off the charts bad because everyone is happy with the governor's choice, and they're not angry. They're not going to come out to vote as a protest because there's nothing for them to protest against.
Look, our turnout during the primary, I believe, was barely at 30%. I'm hoping it gets to 32. If it gets to 32, it's going to be a landslide for Mark in Montgomery County.
We'll find out. All right. So in the 6th congressional district race, we have a candidate named David Trone who's running. announced earlier this year that he was suffering from cancer and he took a break from the campaign. Now he's coming back to the race. He's gone through chemotherapy and he's had surgery. And his opponent, Ami Hober, has continued to campaign throughout the summer. So I want to go to you, Mark, and figure out what is the status of this campaign and this race. It's taken a very unusual turn with Mr. Trone's illness.
Well, of course, we wish him well and hope that the surgery that he had in the past week has gone well. I will say that campaigns are really two-way. I mean, it isn't just informing the voters, but voters also do a lot to inform the candidate. And I think one of the things that Trone, or any candidate who's ill, is losing in this is really the opportunity to learn more about the district. Remember, Trone ran in another district, District 8, 2 years ago, so he really needed the opportunity to get more familiar with District 6, which is a very distinctive district. It goes into western Maryland, obviously parts of upper Montgomery County, and that's something, because of this illness, he's not having the opportunity to have.
Sam, how debilitating was his illness in terms of the campaign for Mr. Trone?
Well, obviously, it took him out of action for a while, so he wasn't out there meeting and greeting voters. But I think he has a grassroots base now after 2 elections that really solidifies him and makes him a very, very viable candidate. He still has a lead in that district, and I think the makeup of that district favors him because he's not your typical Democrat to the left. He's more of a moderate, and a moderate in that district will run well.
Well, I got to disagree with that. He may sound like a moderate now, but several years ago when he was running, he sounded like an extreme progressive. So you've got to wonder which David Trone are you really going to get. What is going to be interesting is what we were just talking about, the turnout in Montgomery County and overall. Because if it ends up being low turnout in Montgomery County or lowish, then that means I think he loses. Because you have a lot of Republicans just over the border, actually from western Montgomery all the way to the end of the state, who aren't exactly going to vote for a progressive or former progressive who's playing moderate, and that could put Ami Hober in there very much.
That's why Jealous's candidate favors Democrats in this part of the state, because it's definitely, he is going to increase turnout. There's evidence of it. You look and you can see the energy of the Montgomery County Democratic Party and in other parts of the state. There's going to be a massive meet and greet for Mark and Democratic candidates at my house, as a matter of fact, on November the 7th, 2 to 4. And I hope you all will come.
I'll stop by.
I think that the Democrats are going to do very well, and I think we will have a great turnout.
And there's going to be room for all the Jealous supporters in Montgomery County at your, well, no, we won't go there.
When we come back from this short break, we're going to try to make some sense out of the very divisive hearings between Judge Kavanaugh and his accuser, Christine Blasey Ford. Stay tuned for this short break. And now, welcome back. For 2 weeks, the nation has been captivated by endless speculation as to what occurred in the summer of 1982. That summer, Michael Jackson sang about "This Girl Is Mine." Willie Nelson crooned "You're Always on My Mind." And Marvin Gaye sang about sexual healing, an ironic title to a song that 36 years later, a nominee of the Supreme Court, Brett Kavanaugh of Bethesda, is defending charges that he groped or attempted to rape Christine Blasey Ford of Potomac at a house party that summer where maybe those songs were playing. Immediately after the release of Dr. Ford's letter of accusation, the battle lines were drawn. Republicans who've seen every Republican nominee to the Supreme Court since 1987 have their characters assassinated by the Democratic Party. These charges by Dr. Ford seemed unexpected, considering this nominee's previous history. But for Democrats, it is a desperate last stand to preserve Roe v. Wade and the ultimate culmination of the Me Too movement. Regardless, as we all know, civil discourse has died in the crossfire. Sam, we've seen a lot these past 2 weeks. Ms. Ford came off as being fairly genuine in her testimony, but she also didn't provide a lot of detail. And the 5 people that she named as being witnesses at this event, they've all denied it. They've denied it in writing under the threat of perjury. So what are we to make of this going forward?
What we're going to make of this is that the nominations for public office, whether it's Supreme Court, whether it's a member of the school board, whether it's an independent running for office or anyone else, comes under such withering fire that we're losing top-notch people because of accusations like this. In this particular instance, right now where we stand as of today, is we have 3 Republicans who have stated that unless there's an FBI investigation, 3 Republicans, they refuse to vote. So today the president has announced a 1-week limited investigation, and we'll have to see where it goes. Overall, I think this is disgraceful. The whole process is disgraceful, and it's too politicized. Whether or not the rape issue was true or not, I have no way, and I haven't heard all the testimony, nor have I participated in an FBI investigation. But the gentleman has put himself forward. I admire anybody who runs for office or who accepts this type of appointment because of the scrutiny that one undergoes. If it's true and the FBI comes back and says they are true, then he shouldn't receive the nomination. If it's not true, his reputation has been brutally harmed, and has also told other people of high quality that they're putting themselves and their families in jeopardy by even considering an appointment to help lead this country.
Well, Sam, in the hearings that we had for Judge Clarence Thomas,
Right.
then Chairman Biden came out and famously said that an FBI investigation is not dispositive, that they only investigate the witnesses and they report what the witnesses testified to. So how are we going to know any more today or in a week from now than we know today? Now, Mark, I want to go to you. We've had a lot of grandstanding state delegates who have stood up and demanded that the governor conduct an investigation. Governor Hogan has, in fact, come out and said that he wants an investigation. Here's one little problem. In 1982, an alleged rape between 2 juveniles was a misdemeanor. The statute of limitations was 1 year. It's run. The police really can't investigate this. So what are we going to learn from all of these demands for further investigation?
Well, I think one of the challenges in this is I think that Dr. Ford was compelling, and something terrible may well have happened to her. I think one of the challenges in this is the evidence is not real strong that she's identified the person that was involved with it, that it wasn't Brett Kavanaugh, that it may be some kind of confusion, which is not unusual in eyewitness and long-term testimony. So if there's a short-term investigation, it go back and review the statements from the people who, frankly, as you mentioned, have rebutted what she has said, have said they didn't happen, they weren't there, that she wasn't. Perhaps there'll be some closure in the next week to be able to say that it's just not possible to substantiate the claims that she's making.
But the biggest thing is that the Republican Senate couldn't get the votes to approve his nomination, so they had to, therefore, approve.
Let me ask you, what do you
this
think about the behavior
investigation.
of the Democrats in this, Sam? Your party.
Well, I
Do you
think
think
that
they behaved honorably?
I think that what I said before is true. I think that there is the lack of respect from both parties, and the polarization, in my opinion, is absolutely terrible. And I think that it leads to a country not being run well because existing government gets gridlocked and they don't do what is necessary for the people of this country. And the same thing happened in Montgomery County, which is why we get term limits, because the voters were so dissatisfied with how the county is being run. So what is the answer to this? How do you get this country back to civility, which prominent leaders, including John McCain and others, have said is really important?
I want to wrap up this segment with Phil. Do you think Clarence Thomas has gotten his reputation back after all these years, after the baseless charges that were cast against him? And how do you think Mark Kavanaugh is going to get his reputation back, whether he's confirmed or not? You've got 30 seconds to wrap it up.
Absolutely not. Clarence Thomas hasn't. In fact, the first thing that happened is they bring Anita Hill out and make her again some kind of a prominent media figure, despite the fact that she had absolutely no proof and is pretty well actually a liar. And what makes things even worse is that no, Kavanaugh will not get his reputation back. And the most important thing we're missing here, that baseless accusations mean so much.
Thank you, Phil. When we come back from this short break, we're going to have parting shots. Stay tuned. And welcome back. More than 800 years ago, in June of 1215, one of the greatest moments in world history occurred. It was the signing by the King of England of the Magna Carta, which established the principle that everyone is subject to the law, even kings, and it guaranteed the right of the individual, the right to justice and the right to a fair trial, because prior to that signing, it was at the whim of the sovereign. Throughout this disgraceful spectacle of the confirmation of Judge Brett Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court, it is this principle, the principle of a fair trial, of innocence embodied in the Magna Carta, which has been trampled and abandoned by those only too eager to see Judge Kavanaugh's head on a spike for their own political gain. It's really gotten awful. The rejection of what was once described as the golden thread of Western law, a principle that was considered so important that it was included in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. This is the greatest loss from this confirmation battle, one that we may never recover from, and one that I hope we can. Now with their own parting shots, Sam Statland.
Well, folks, this past week, a really good Democrat, member of the county council, activist in Montgomery County, and a person who made decisions that were best for the people of this county passed away, the Honorable Bill Scheer, and my heart goes out to his family because his younger son Todd passed away and another son as well. So my heart is out to you, all of the Scheers.
Thank you, Sam. Mark Uncapher, for your parting shot.
This past week in the county executive debate at a Latino group, Sam's candidate, Mark Elridge tried to do a little Spanish, and apparently his pronunciation wasn't all that convincing. So here's a recommendation to Mark, is he should take advantage of a free online app called Duolingo, and he can work on his Spanish, improve it. I'm working on it myself. Here's a program. It doesn't cost the government anything. It's free. It's on the internet, and he can improve his Spanish.
Well, thank you, Mark. Phil Bell, your parting shot.
Now today, I wanted to take a big parting shot at Jeff Flake and the other spineless Republicans who've done such a bad job. But since this is the end of September and the end of yet another disappointing season for my New York Mets, I'm going to take a shot at them and talk about my least favorite all-time Met, Juan Samuel. Everybody might remember Juan was traded to the Mets in 1989. It was a blockbuster deal. He had been an outstanding player with the Philadelphia Phillies. He came over and he was a total slug. And what did he do? Went to LA, back on the All-Star team. So as a disappointing season ends, Juan, I can't say happy trails to you, but thank you for all the memories.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. This has been an interesting week, I must say, for political observers. It's hard to have been to think about anything else other than the drama that's been going on down on Capitol Hill. And you have to feel for the Kavanaugh family who grew up here in Montgomery County. They've got two lovely girls, and it's been a tragedy for them. And if the charges are baseless, and I say if because they're not proven, I know how I think. I think they're all baseless. But if they are baseless, what a terrible thing to have done to this fine man, and what a terrible thing to have done to his family. And if Miss Blasey Ford suffered some trauma in 1982, that's terrible as well. And I'm sorry that she's had to live with that all these many years. So we're going to find out in another week what happens in this drama, and we'll find out whether or not Judge Kavanaugh gets appointed to the bench. But we, the American people, have been the losers in all of this, as well as the individuals involved. So for 21 this week, I want to thank the audience for tuning in each and every week to Montgomery County's hardest political talk show. And for our three guests tonight, I want to thank you for participating in a civilized debate over some very tough topics. For 21 this week, I'm Casey Aiken.